Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 5. We'll present about Mantiq, second act of mind, which is judgment. Okay, next, meet our group, Nik Nur Najah binti Nik Abdul Rahman, 2011460, Manodra binti Noh, 2011620, and me, Ira Meshara binti Sazali, 2019570. Okay, this is our table of contents. We will discuss about what is judgment, proposition and proof. Next, types of propositions and logical form. Next is tricky proposition and complex propositions. And last one is about feature research and conclusion. Okay, we move to the introduction. For the introduction, I would like to start with question. Why should we as a student need to learn Mantiq? Okay, Mantiq can known as a theory of logic, also known as science of Aristotelian logic or traditional formal logic. The scholars had different opinions when describing the definition of the logic theory, even though it has the same essence. The main purpose for learning logic is to preserve the reason from doing any false thinking with the help of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Okay, we go to the points. Logic concerns about the conception, which is tasawwur, which means a view or a description from someone's mind that allows others to know about something. For example, how do we describe a table? As we know, table is square. The shape is square, and most of the table have 4 legs, and the table is made from hard material, isn't it? Now that's the meaning of the example for tasawwur. Next, tasdik. Tasdik explains about the essence and to complement the conception, which is to allow the statement and to search for a truth. For example, tasdik means that we find proof about one statement if the proof show the statement is true or false. Okay, next we go to our main topic, which is proposition. Proposition is to find the contradistinction between the propositions and the terms, and to find the differentiation between the propositions and the syllogism. Proposition can be divided into two, which is qadiyah hamliyah and qadiyah syartiyah. As we know, attributive proposition, which is qadiyah hamliyah, can be defined as a statement, which is when the subject is identified by the predicates, and this qadiyah does not need another statement in order to understand the statement. For example, the statement, all humans are mortal. You can understand that all humans on this world will die and nothing is permanent. That's mean and the example of qadiyah hamliyah. While next point is a conditional proposition, which known as qadiyah syartiyah, is a combination between two statements that includes customary requirement such as if and however. For example, if you work hard, you will succeed. So the customary requirement that used in this statement is the word of if. If you work hard, you will succeed.
Now, I will cover the part of judgment, proposition, and also what is true. We go one by one. So first, we go to judgment. The definitions of judgment is second act of the mind, which means here, second act of the mind is judgment. And the results of judgment is logical conclusion known as a proposition, which means here it leads to logical conclusion, which is proposition. So for the third is linguistic expression, which is declarative sentence. What is declarative sentence? So, declarative sentence which make statements or convey information. For example, in terms of statement of fact is the sun rises in the east. And another example in terms of affirmations is she is a talented musician, or the project deadline is tomorrow. Hence, declarative sentences present information or make statements about reality. Next, number 4, critical distinction, which means crucial distinction. What is the meaning of distinction? Distinction is the different. So we go one by one. There are three types critical distinction here for the judgment, which the first is between judgment and the concept, and between judgment and argument, and the last crucial for logical process. Now we move on to the proposition. So proposition in nature is results of the judgment, and in proposition expression in declarative sentence, which declarative sentence, as I already mentioned before in the judgment, and proposition have sentences also which distinct from sentences and word. There are sentences also, and sentences is focused on the distinction between sentences and words, and sentences and words are not crucial, are not critical within the second act of the mind. And number 4 is proposition, also truth or falsity attribute, which mean truth and falsity attribute unique to proposition. Other than that, in proposition, they are role in argument, which truth depends on logical validity. Now we move on to the characteristic in proposition. There are three characteristics in proposition. The first is the actual affirmation or denial. The second is the simple with only one subject and one predicate. So in proposition is only one subject and one predicate. And the last characteristic is judged as true or false. Now we move on to the affirmation or denial types, which the first is declarative sentence. And I already mentioned before in the judgment what is the declarative sentence. And the next is complex expression without affirmation or denial. And the last one is grammatical expression and categorical proposition. Next, we move on to the simplicity and categorical proposition. There are three simplicity and categorical proposition. The first is one subject, one predicate only. And simplicity in categorical proposition is to avoid confusion in judgment. And the last is the evaluation as true or false based on one S and one P. And we next is types of compound preposition, which there are three types of compound preposition. The first is hypothetical, disjunctive, and conjunctive. So what is hypothetical, what is disjunctive, and what is conjunctive? Basically, these are terms used to describe different types of compound proposition in logic, which the first is hypothetical. Hypothetical means uh, hypothetical, also known as conditional preposition. The structure of hypothetical is if then. For example, if it rains, then the game will be cancelled, meaning that states a condition which the antecedents and its consequence, which mean the consequence. So for the disjunctive, it involves a choice between alternative. So the structure of disjunctive is they use either or. For example, either study for the exam or relax at home, meaning presents mutually exclusive options indicating that one or the other is true. Next, we move to the conjunctive. So conjunctive, it involves the combination of two or more statements. So the structure of conjunctive is they use both and. For example, both the sun is shining and the birds are singing. So the words both and here, meaning assert the truth of multiple statements simultaneously. To sum up, hypothetical hypothetical proposition deal with conditional relationship, while for the disjunctive proposition involve a choice between alternative. Other than that, conjunctive proposition combine multiple statements indicating that all are true simultaneously. There are true or false nature in proposition, which inclusive to proposition, stand alone, or in argument, and also determines truth in argument. There are also function in proposition, which it verifies or denies validity of one phrase over another. There are views on proposition, which are modern logic and also Aristotelian logic. From modern logic views on proposition is broad sense, any classes are set. And from Aristotelian logic views on proposition, which truth limited to objectively real types. Next, we move on to the Aristotelian logic. Aristotelian logic recognizes 10 highest genera. So, it refers to a concept in Aristotelian logic. In Aristotelian philosophy, Aristotle identified 10 fundamental categories or classes, known as the highest genera, which he considered to represent the most general kinds or types of being. These categories are considered subjective because they pertain to the nature or essence of things rather than arbitrary classification imposed by human thoughts. The 10 highest genera in Aristotelian logic are substance, quality, quantity, relation, time, place, action, passion, posture, and also possession. These highest genera are considered real kinds because they represent fundamental and objective aspect of reality. The term subjective here doesn't mean arbitrary or personal, but rather refers to the inherent nature or essence that these categories capture about the diverse entities in the world, according to Aristotle's philosophical framework. And also, the next is emphasizes essence over population. Other than that, Aristotelian logic also says that essence signifies inherent properties. Now we move on to the comparisons of modern and Aristotelian logic. In modern logic, the arbitrary classification into mental boxes, and it also emphasizes on populations over essence, and it also skeptical of essence or natures. Whereas Aristotelian logic, the truth is limited to objectively real types, and it also recognizes 10 highest genera as subjective real kinds, as I already mentioned before, and it also focuses on essence and natures. Next, we move on to the what is truth. The first is truth and proposition. Truth and proposition, they are purpose of proposition, which truth is the primary focus of proposition in logic. And it defining truth with philosophically, truth is considered understandable but challenging, like hunting a Siberian tiger. Truth and proposition, residence of truth, which understanding where truth resides is likened to finding its house. And in terms of truth attribution, which ideas and thoughts can be labeled as true or false. Continuing what is truth in mental processes. There are 5 truths in mental processes, which the first is 3 sets of mental processes is product, logical expression, and linguistic expression exist. The second is truth attribution, which specifically attributed to judgment, concept, and also preposition. The third truth in mental processes, which concept and argument, which truth does not lie in concepts and argument. It resides in judgment. Number 4, in truth in mental processes is unclear or ambiguous terms, which concepts and argument express concept, but there is no inherent right or wrong. And the last truth in mental processes, which is combining truth, meaning only in proposition the combination of concepts and judgment can truth be determined? Next, continuing what is truth in terms of proposition and truth. So the definitions of proposition is a statement indicating whether something is true or false. And number two, enunciation versus proposition. Enunciation is a standalone statement. A proposition is used in argument to prove or support a conclusion. And in terms of modern language usage, is proposition often refers to any statement, whether standalone or part of an argument. Next, the last part that I will cover is what is true in terms of truth in proposition. The first is combinations of words, which truth in a proposition involves the combinations of words or speech conveying meaning. Second, representation, which represents a complex idea or statement. And the last, determining truth or falsity, which means determine based on content, whether standalone or part of an argument. That's all from me. Thank you.
Next, we move to 5 types of propositions. The first one is universal affirmative proposition, which is the formula all S is P, or S is equal to P. Okay, this subject for this proposition must be in universal terms because universal affirmative proposition, and the predicate should allow all the subjects because the predicate must be in a positive proposition, and the connection between the subject and the predicate must be parallel or synchronized. For example, if the first statement is true, the second statement must be true also. For example, all humans are thinking. The first statement is all humans, show that this statement is a universal statement. Are thinking also true statement, which is the predicate that allow the subjects. Okay, if the first statement is untrue, then the second statement is false. For example, all men are evil. This statement is totally false because not all men are evil. Maybe some or half men are evil. Okay, and for these propositions indicates the use of words all, every, each respectively. The second type of proposition is universal negative proposition. The formula is no S is P. The subject for this proposition must be in universal terms, but the predicate should deny all the subjects. And the connection between the subject and the predicate for this proposition only have one form, which is separate between the two statements. It means that the two statements do not have any relation or connection, and the meaning is contradictory to each other. For example, no one human is a plant. As we know, human is not a plant. Human is human, plant is plant, animal is animal. And for this proposition can be shown by the words of no, none, no one, and etc. Next, the third types of proposition is particular negative proposition. This subject must be in particular terms, while the predicate needs to deny some of the subject. There are three forms of statement connection for this proposition. First, the connection which the subject must include the predicate. The formula is some S is not P. For example, some of the students are not Malaysians, which means some of the students are Malaysian and some of them are not Malaysian, maybe Egyptian, Chinese, and so on. Next, the connection between half of the subject and half of the predicate in the contradicting. The formula for this proposition is some S is not some P. For example, half of the Arabians are not half of the Africans. And the last form can be described when the subject and the predicate are totally separate. There is no relation between the two statements. The formula is S is not P. For example, some animals are not plants. As we know, animals is animals and plants is plants. And this proposition is used by the words not and is not because it is must in a negative condition. The fourth type of proposition is particular affirmative propositions. The formula for this proposition is some S is P. The subject for this proposition must be in particular terms, but the predicate must allow all the subjects. The first form is the relation about the subject that includes the predicate. For instance, half of the people are Malaysian. That means the half of the people is a particular subject are Malaysian are in affirmative conditions. Next form is the proposition refers to the interaction between the sum of subject and sum of predicate. The formula is sum S is sum P. For example, half of the Malaysians are some of the doctors. And these propositions mostly use the words of some, half, a few of, and some from. The last types of proposition is singular propositions. These propositions refers to individuality, which the mawdu' is specifically to some things which are from one of the isim al-ma'rifah. For example, Abdullah is excellent, and the singular proposition here is Abdullah. The word of Abdullah shows the individuality which refers to a person. And when talking about singular propositions, they do not come with any words that show universality, which is all, and particularity, which is some. Next, we move to the next slide, which is about logical form. Logical form is the terms or the form that has been used in the knowledge of logic, and it has three forms, which are subjects, predicates, and copula. Next, the first term of logical form is subjects. Subjects must be in noun, pronouns, or phrase for easily exchanging their positions when it is necessary. It's same with predicate. Predicate must be in noun also, pronoun or phrase for easily exchanging their position when it is necessary. While for subject, must be in the condition that they are able to change and move. The predicate also need to allow to do some positions modifications, but they must be ensured not to change the meaning of the statement. The third terms of logical form is copula. Copula refers to the uses of is or is not for singular and are or are not for plural. And the function of copula is to describe the relation between the subjects and the predicates. Look at the examples. Abdullah is excellence. As we know, Abdullah is the subject. Excellent is the predicate. The copula, the use of is, which relates the subject and the predicate. Abdullah is excellent. This is the proof statement. We move to the main purpose of logical form. Logical form is used to make the ordinary language more clear and can be understood by the learner when using the propositions. Logical form is also needed to measure if the arguments that contain these propositions are acceptable or rejected. Next, logical form is also used to replace natural language for the purpose of scientific and mathematical investigation. It is to make the calculation understandable to the learner. It can be said that logical forms make the calculation easier. For example, if we do mathematical calculation, less complicated the calculation, then more easily we get the solution, isn't it? It can be analogized with logic theory, where the function of logical forms is to make the statement more easy to understand. For example, we look at the example, some examples on how to distinguish between ordinary language and logical form in a statement. As we can see, ordinary language, all humans are thinking, while logical form, all humans are the animal that thinking. This statement had been created by the logicians that learned the theory of logic. They agree that humans can be categorized as an animal. But what makes difference between humans and animals is that humans have been given a reason, which is the brain, which is the akal, by Allah Subhanahu wa Taala for thinking which is good and which is bad. Therefore, learning the theory of logic makes someone have a deeper understanding on a statement.
My name is Niknur Najah binti Nik Abdurrahman, metric number 2011460. So next, we move to the next content, which is tricky proposition. There is nothing in the grammatical structure of the sentence to indicate that it corresponding to more than one logical proposition. There are two classes that are usually counted. Firstly is exclusive proposition. These contain words such as alone, which are attached to the subject and thus exclude the predicate from any other subject than this subject. Therefore, two propositions are needed to express the full meaning. One is to confirm the predicate of the subject, and the other one to deny it from all the others. For example, God alone is almighty. This is equivalent to God is almighty. So nothing else is omnipotent. Secondly is acceptive proposition. In this, the subject term is limited in its use by words such as accept, save, which exclude part of its denotation. For example, all but one of the crew have drowned. Here again, two exponential propositions are required. One to deny the predicate of the exclude part, and the other one is to affirming it from the rest. However, an example given would be one of the crew did not drown. The remaining member drowned. If the order of terms is reversed, then both exclusiveness and exclusion can be expressed by a single exponent. Only God is almighty. would be all Almighty is God, and all the crew but one were drowned would be the part of the crew that was not drowned was one man. But if the original order is to be preserved, two arguments are necessary.
So next is complex proposition. A complex proposition is like having a complex term for its subject or predicate. By a complex term is understood a terms of many words consisting of two or more different parts, so that it expresses not only the nature of the thing symbolized, but also one or more qualification it possesses. There are two forms of complex proposition are usually distinguished by logicians. The distinction is grammatical, not logical, and is given to keep us on our guard against ambiguity. So, firstly, is proposition with clear qualification. In this, the qualification belong to each individual, denoted by the general name to which it belongs. Thus, in the proposition, the whale, which is a mammal, is an aquatic animal. So the relative clause may be used for each individual denoted by the general name whale. And secondly is proposition with limited qualification or qualifier. In this case, the qualification limits the meaning of the general name to a specific part of its denotation. Thus, in the sentence, all nations which have been civilized have cultivated philosophy. So the qualification does not belong to all the members of the class indicates. So not all the nations are civilized. So the determination of time involved in the past use of past and future verb is a special form of complexity in proposition. However, logic is unable to ignore another recurring from is that produced by the use of a transitive verb followed by an object.
Next is future research. The writer of the book suggests to come out with many other examples that related with this proposition concept so that the student can have well understanding about the topic. Because as we know, proposition can be applied in many areas of life and science, including decision making, problem solving, developing critical thinking, improving communication by making argument, and information analysis by evaluating the truth or falsity of information.
In conclusion, a judgment expressed in words is called a proposition. It also can be defined as an act of the mind affirming or denying the agreement of two objective ideas. The mind in judging compares two ideas and consequently the object represented by those ideas and affirms or denies that they agree with one another. Here we put the diagram of our topic, which is proposition. I think that's all from our group. Thank you.